Hey guys, it's Steve. Before the episode starts, I just want to give a special shout out to Sean from Thin Blue Line America, the Facebook page. On that page, they sell items dedicated to those who support law enforcement, and a portion of all their proceeds is donated to families of fallen officers. Sean actually put me in touch with the guest you're about to hear. I so appreciate it. I love it when you guys reach out and you're able to hook me up with an interview. It's so great. And he also, I just received in the mail a baseball cap from his company, and it's awesome. It's a black on black Under Armour hat. There's a picture of it on the Things Police See Facebook page. You can check that out. And on the back of it, it's got the Thin Blue Line American flag embroidered. It's just an awesome baseball cap. It's probably the most comfortable baseball cap I've ever worn. So go check him out over there on his Facebook page, Thin Blue Line America, and I will put a link to that in the show notes.
This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, it's Steve. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm joined once again by my friend and co-host, Ken Roybal. Ken, thanks for coming on.
Hello.
So
Good
this
to be
is
here.
This is geez, I'm not even going to say it because last time I screwed up the episode number because I got them all pre-recorded now and I can't keep track. But this is an episode with a officer that spent 40 years in the Deep South policing. So
Deep South.
yes, so I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be pretty spicy.
So deep. It's not even on the map. It's so deep.
Not even on the map. He went from patrol to detective to sergeant to SWAT. At the end of his career, worked for the marshals. He's got a book out called The Blue Truth / Liberal Lies, and it just sounds like he's had one hell of a career.
Yeah, and we gotta say that people watch all kinds of news from Los Angeles to Chicago to New York, and the Deep South, they do police work a little bit different there. So this is going to be a kick.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So should we dial in Mr. Neal Smith?
Let's dial him in.
All right. Let's see if I can do a better job than I did last time.
Hello,
Ken, are you there?
Yeah.
All right, you're on with Neal. Neal, are you there?
Neal.
Hey, Ken.
Hey, Neal. How are you?
I'm great. It's nice to talk with both of you guys.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Neal, we're excited to have you on, man. We were just chatting before we called you up, talking about the 40 years of policing the Deep South. That's quite the career.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. It was quite challenging. Actually, 38 years. I think the publisher rounded it up to 40.
Oh, okay. And you were in Macon, Georgia, correct?
Correct. I started with the Macon Fire Department in 1974, and I guess I lost my mind and transferred to the police department in 77.
Yeah,
usually it's the other way around.
Yeah.
People become cops and they go, "No, forget this."
Yeah. And I retired in 2004 and worked in Bibb County Jail for 6 months. That was before consolidation. Now, believe it or not, now Macon PD does not even exist. They did away with it with a stroke of a pen. 150-year-old agency made it all the sheriff department in 2013.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah. Anyway, I did 6 months in the county jail and hated it the first day, and then I got contracted on to the U.S. Marshal Service through a private contractor and did 12 years here in Macon, protecting the courthouse and the judges and the staff and traveling with the judges out of town and that kind of thing. Describe
to us what kind of city Macon is. What's it like?
Macon is your typical mid-sized city in the South. It used to be a really thriving before 1980. Believe it or not, it had 102,000 people, but just before consolidation, it was down to like 68,000.
Whoa!
The typical flight of your working class people out of the city limits. that we have nationwide. And it's trying to make a comeback. We got some industry coming in, and got a big new Amazon plant here, and several more industries. And downtown is trying to make it be a big nightclub scene. Of course, I don't know, y'all a long ways off, but Macon, Georgia was the Southern rock capital of the world. This is where the Allman Brothers Band recorded, and the Marshall Tucker Band, and Wet Willie and Charlie Daniels. All that was going on here in the 70s.
I know all those bands.
Yes, sir. It was quite a time. Capricorn Records, Macon, Georgia.
It's like Nashville on the East Coast.
Yeah, made some movies based on Macon as well. I think there was a Don Johnson had a movie out there, Macon County Line or something. I mean, but Macon was on the map because of that stuff too. They've been around a while.
Believe it or not, they're making a lot. They're filming here constantly now. I like the old part of downtown. The buildings are actually, some of them over 100, near 150 years old, and the movie companies like it. They'll come in and dress them up to say what they want them to say. And Clint Eastwood filmed The Problem with the Curveball, and several more. Of course, I can't think of them right now. But
what was the size of the Macon police department when you were there?
It was always around 260 to 300, and that says more than it really is. You know, all that's counting administrative, and there was probably 150 patrol officers.
That's still a pretty good sized department, Steve. That for the East Coast, that's a pretty decent size too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think nationally, that's a good sized department. I mean, we have our super departments on either coast, but those are kind of outliers. Most people, that's Macon's a pretty good sized city, a pretty good sized department.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, sir. When I retired in 2004, before consolidation, just the old city limits, we answered approximately 160,000 calls for service per year, compared to the county's 50,000.
Jeez.
And now they got the 150,000. The 160,000 plus the 50,000. And believe it or not, less people. They got a big problem with manpower. They should be running twice the number of cars that we were running per area with just the old city, but they're running what we were running or less.
Wow.
They burning out back to back calls constantly. No time for proactive patrol, none.
Oh, I'm sure. You started in 1977, correct?
Correct.
Can you think back to your early days on the street, to the first call you went to that was you'd consider like a hot call, or really got your adrenaline going?
I was listening to one of your podcasts the other night, and I heard an officer on that hadn't been on but 4 years, and I noticed it was real easy for him to reach back.
I feel you, Neal.
After 26 years and gone from actually being a street cop for over 13, it's all kind of a blur. But actually, when I started writing my book, actually the very first line of the book literally tells about the first little adrenaline pump that I got on the street called Ajax Street. It was I talk about in the book how back then especially there was a hidden culture that the cities, the politicians had, so to speak, hid behind an invisible curtain that they hoped passersby and tourists didn't see. And he being a somewhat middle class, I guess, sheltered white kid, I didn't even know communities like this existed. Next thing I know, we're zooming down into a place called Ajax Street for a fight call. I'd never been in any real fights. I mean, maybe a high school fist fight, but never a fight where your life might depend on it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I get there? Is this training really going to work? And, we get down in this bottom and like in another country and people running and hollering. And anyway, we get a guy cuffed and get out of there. And that became obviously just your everyday call, after that routine, but to a 23-year-old at the time, that was heart pumping. And then probably not too far after that came my first car chase. I was a passenger. We rode they were still 2-person units then, but my partner and I were cruising probably about 2 a.m. on a road called Columbus Road, and there was a old gas station back then called a base station. And back then we actually had time for proactive preventive burglary patrol on the midnight shift. That's basically what we did, was cruise and look for burglars. Anyway, a Chevy 2 with headers on it, uncapped, and a racing engine in it, pulled out in front of us and westbound on Columbus Road. And he just stopped, and we stopped behind him, and he revved the engine up to the floor like a dragster and dumped the clutch.
Wow.
Left us sitting there in a cloud of tire smoke. And there we went. And to top it all, we were not even in a real police car at the time. They were kind of ragged and short on cars in 77. And we were in a former admin car, 1976 Ford LTD, with no police suspension, no police package. And man, this dude I was riding with, it was just like, at the time, just like a Hollywood movie. I thought he'd lost his mind. He was going down the wrong side of the road. Going down the wrong side of the road, I remember glimpsing over and seeing the speedometer on 120. And the Chevy 2 was gone. I mean, every curve we went around, you could see his tail lights going around the next one. Anyway, in about 3 miles, we found him. He was running so fast he couldn't hold on his side of the road, and clipped a big old Ford LTD head on, but not direct head on, like left headlight to left headlight. And it just peeled that Chevy 2 open right down the driver's side like you open it with a can opener. And the dude lived. It was in the hospital quite a while, but he lived, and luckily the people in the other car was not hurt that bad somehow.
What was he running for?
Just your typical teenager at the time, I guess. Just he could outrun us, and which he did.
Wow, that's pretty ballsy to challenge a cop like that.
Yeah, he.
It's so strange that. Go ahead. I was going to say, it's so strange with people when they go in pursuit. They're doing all these things. They're almost getting in crashes, or they crash at the end of the thing, and then when you ask them why they were running, they go, "I got a $50 warrant." Yeah, it's like, dude, you just sent yourself to jail for a $50 warrant, you dummy.
Well, my license was suspended.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Not worth it, man. I don't know what they're thinking.
There's nothing more uncomfortable than being the passenger in a chase vehicle.
Oh my God,
I hate it.
I still hate it. I don't like riding. I don't like riding with anybody. I used to love the chases. I'm a big race fan, big NASCAR fan, and at the time I'd never driven a race car. Man, sometimes I'd pull up behind the bad guys and pretend I was drafting them. But yeah, it was quite a experience.
Now, Neal, you've had a encounter, let's say, with someone who was famous, and I was reading about this a little bit, and I just can't wait to hear your story about it. Ronnie Hammond from the Atlantic Rhythm section, and it was a suicide by cop. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Man, I love that group.
Oh, I did too. Still do. Yeah, I can tell you the whole story. How much time we have, but can be quick.
All you need.
Begin.
Take your time.
Okay, to begin with, to make it so unique, I kind of grew up with Ronnie. He was 3 to 4 years older than me, but we both grew up in South Macon and went to the same high school, Willingham High School. And he, back at the time, at the local skate arenas, they had dancers called sock hops.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Ronnie playing in a local band called the Celtics, the sock hop. And next thing I know, sometime in the 70s, he's the lead singer for the Atlanta Rhythm Section, who got quite famous.
And just for your viewers, Steve, I know not everybody knows him, but back in the 70s, the Atlanta Rhythm Section, that was big. That was like, if you're listening to the radio for music, they came on. You knew who they were.
I heard they had top 10 hits. They were invited to the White House by the president to play on the lawn.
Yeah. And this guy, Ronnie, he was smooth, man. His voice was amazing.
It really was. Yeah, they had gold. I'm not sure about platinum, but I know they had several gold albums. Some of the top hits were Champagne Jam, Not Gonna Let It Bother Me Tonight, Spooky, Imaginary Lover. Anyway, that night, some 25, 30 years later, whatever, December 28, 1998, when I went on shift, another sergeant said, Neal, you may be getting a call to Ronnie Hammond's house. He's been kind of suicidal, and you may get another call back. But I think initially somebody had said he had taken some pills or something. But I thought, okay, didn't think nothing about it really. And sure enough, about 8 o'clock, another officer and I, Officer Thomas, we were sitting downtown side by side, like how cops pull up beside each other and talk. And sure enough, the call went out, attempted suicide on Mathis Street. And just so you know, Mathis Street was no place where you would expect to find a rock star that were as successful as they were. He had lost all that money and stuff, and Mathis was used to be a nice area, but it's not that nice now. And anyway, he was renting a house on Mathis, and we got there, and he was in the front yard with a broken off Fender guitar neck in his left hand and a huge framing hammer in his right hand, and a little blood trickling from his right wrist, I believe, where he had attempted to cut on himself a little bit. And there was just two of us there, Ray and myself, and the paramedics were there. We kind of tried to keep him in a little perimeter, and back we're probably 10 to 12 feet from him, and trying to talk him into getting in the ambulance. He said, oh no, oh hell no, I'm not getting in the ambulance, and if you try to put your hands on me, you better be ready to die. So not long after that, he suddenly broke our perimeter and ran in the house. We were right there at the steps, and he ran up the house and slammed the door shut. So, I hadn't known Ronnie really in years, I didn't know what might happen. So we backed off to the street, and to this day, I don't know why I sat down in my car to use the radio when I had a lapel mic. I guess tunnel vision and stress was setting in, but I remember sitting down in my car and telling the control center that he had went in and appeared he might have barricaded himself in. She might want to notify the OD. That's what we call the officer of the day that was in charge of the whole shift. Anyway, about that time, the firefighters yelled that he's back outside. At this point, I didn't have a clue where Ray was. Tunnel vision was setting in, I guess. But I got out of the car, and I saw Ronnie coming back down the steps, and I remember focusing in to see if he still had the hammer in the guitar neck. I'm not even sure I realized it was a guitar neck, but I knew it was a hammer. So I pulled my Glock out and put it down at low ready, and I put my toes, I remember putting my end of my shoes right up against the curb. A very small yard, and just your typical yard in a small 1,200 square foot frame house. Put my toes against the curb, and he looked like a zombie at this point. He was coming down the edge of the driveway, and I yelled. I said, "Ronnie," I said, "dude, it's time to put that stuff down and let's get an ambulance." And he changed, when he realized I was there, he changed his course and started across the corner of the yard directly toward me. There's probably a little 2-foot hump between the yard and the street, yard about 2 feet higher than the street. Well, I saw him coming, so I backed up to the center of the street to give him the width of a lane, about 6 or 8 more feet to change his mind. He got to the top of that little hump, and he drew that hammer back as an Indian would a tomahawk, and he said, "What the fuck you go do?" And he came off that hill with his left foot raised in the air, and I just raised. Training kicked in. I don't remember a conscious decision to shoot. Training kicked in. I raised the Glock and fired. He came down off the hill, and when he just went face down, and was laying there doing the death gurgle, as we call it. And paramedics were on the scene, and they came up. Let me add in here, this is kind of a touchy subject, but you know how a lot of cops nationwide take heat every time they shoot or hurt a person of African descent. Well, that culture had my head and still has cops' heads so screwed up and fearful that man was laying there at my feet dying, and that Glock still smoking. And the first words out of my mouth was, "I'm glad he's white."
Wow.
Now that's pitiful that they have us in that kind of mindset. But anyway, Ray came up, put his arm around me, and said, "Damn." Remember that plain as day. No crowd control needed. Nobody, nothing like that. And so anyway, detectives and all that shows up, and they take my Glock, of course, and we go downtown. Internal Affairs to interview me, and they did, and they were very nice. I didn't have no hard time with them. And my biggest concern that night was, believe it or not, was for them to get done with me where I could get to the beer store before they closed.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. At that point, they were telling me it didn't look good for Ronnie and all that. So I was just glad to get out and get home and get a couple of beers in me and go to sleep.
And that was a gut shot you got on him.
That's correct. Thank God. I'm so proud Ronnie didn't die. I shot low, hit him through the gut, and actually when the paramedics took his shirt off laying there in the street, the slug fell out on the road. Mm-hmm. It went in near his navel and came out right beside his spine in the back.
Whoa.
And there's a good side to this story. You ready for that part?
Sure. I'm ready, man.
Okay. A few months later, after Ronnie recovered, he was in the hospital a while. They had to cut out a lot of his intestines, I understand. I went in a local convenience store outside the city limits at the time, and called Mike's convenience store, and we all three of us went to Willingham, Ronnie, Mike, and I. And Mike said, "Hey, Neal," said, "Ronnie Hammond was in here just yesterday, I believe, and he said he wants to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" like what for? He said, "Well, I think he wants to apologize."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, but since he was who he was and not your typical cop, killer, or a thug, or whoever committing a crime and trying to hurt you to get away, it was a classic case of attempted suicide by a cop, and somebody I almost knew, I always knew of him. Heck, I paid money to go to the Macon Centerplex to see them play in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I agreed and gave him my phone number, and sure enough, I don't know, a few days later, telephone rang, and I answered it, and the boy said, is this Neal? I said, this is Neal. He said, this is Ronnie Hammond. And I'm like, okay, and all kind of thoughts was going through my mind. This is weird. This is a guy I almost killed, plus he's a rock star that I envy. And so we talked and agreed to meet at a Waffle House. I took a huge chance. I could have got screwed big time on this, but luckily he wasn't that kind of guy. But I dropped the charges from felony assault on an officer to a misdemeanor. Went to the crime lab, checked out his claw hammer and guitar neck and the bullet, the slug. Anyway, I met him at the Waffle House, and he saw the hammer and stuff, and he said, now, I want my framing hammer back. That's what he did, was frame houses when he wasn't playing music. I want my framing hammer. I framed a lot of houses with that. He said, but you can have the old Fender guitar neck if you want it. And I said, okay, yeah, sure, I want it. And here's your hammer. And then I gave him the slug, and he said, oh, wow. He said, this is what did it, huh? I said, that's what did it. And he said, I might have it gold plated. So we went on in the Waffle House, and in between him signing autographs for waitresses, and that man looked at me in the eyes and took both my hands across the little Waffle House table, held both my hands and looked at me in the eyes and said, I'm sorry, Neal, for what I made you do.
Mm.
And I said, Ronnie, I accept your apology, and I just thank God you lived. And he said, well, I'm sorry. He said, all people want to think about is me. He said, but I know it had to be hard on you. You going through something like this? I said, well, yeah, it's pretty stressful, especially with all the heat I took in the newspaper from. They had a column here at the time called Straight Talk. They still got it, but now you have to leave your name. Back then, you didn't have to leave your name.
Mm-hmm.
All the old hippies in Macon was wearing me out. Wearing me.
Mm.
And he didn't have to shoot that man. Aren't they trained in karate and hand-to-hand combat?
Why didn't you shoot him in the leg?
Yeah. Why didn't I shoot him in the leg?
And this was in 1998, so they had all kinds of stuff by then. But yeah, the silliness that comes out is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to explain to people, we're allowed to use one level of force above what they had. He already had impact weapons. I wasn't required to have a daggum stick fight with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a very unique situation. I mean, how many officers out there shoot someone and then, that person's famous and then they meet them over waffles and the guy apologizes? That's insane.
Yeah, and even on top of that we became friends. Ronnie called me every once a week, and then it got down to once a month up until the time he passed. He died of heart failure in 2013 or 2011, I forget. But and we were lucky enough to see his very last performance. We got, the Allman Brothers Band is from here. This is where they recorded and lived after they got famous. But there's a house here, a museum called the Big House. It's one of the houses they lived in. It's a real nice museum. If you ever come, you need to make sure you go to the Big House. But anyway, the Big House has small concerts in the backyard, and I saw where a band was playing. This was obviously before Ronnie died, maybe in 2010, 11. And they said Ronnie Hammond, formerly of ARS, was going to be the guest. And sure enough, I said, we're going. And we went, and he came out at about 9:30, and it was on July night. He looked rough, man. He had on cut off blue jeans like it was 1975, and he was soaking wet with sweat. You wouldn't have think that man could sing a lick. And he got up on that little stage, and one of the guys in this other band, I believe their name was the Buckeye Band. I think they said one of those guys used to play with ARS. And anyway, he got up there and he sang, I'm Not Gonna Let It Bother Me Tonight, Champagne Jam, and Spooky. And I walked right up to the stage. It was just a foot high. And I walked up there with a camera, and he recognized me and winked at me. Mm-hmm. And when he got off the stage, he gave me a big hug and gave my wife a big hug. I said, Ronnie, I said, damn, man, you sound just like it's 1975. You're amazing. He said, oh, you're too kind, Neal. But he really did. He sounded great. And he walked away in the darkness to whoever he was with, and never saw him again.
Did he continue to have problems, or did he? Was there some turning point in his life that he got over his alcohol and mental health stuff?
He credited the shooting with turning his life around. He said that I saved his life, and he found God and a new wife, because of that incident. So, no, he was a good dude. Had a really big heart. He really was.
It sounds like he made an impact on your life as well.
He did.
I can't imagine that moment when you're sitting there at that restaurant, and he reaches across and holds both your hands and asks, it tells you he's sorry. Cops never get that, and I think that talks about who he was, kind of heart he had.
Exactly. It's a unique story. I don't know if it's ever happened. I'm sure it probably has, but it's probably very rare.
Did he become a Christian? Yeah. Is that what happened?
Did what? Excuse me?
Did he become a Christian? Born again?
Yes, that's what he said.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I think he already was Christian based, but I think he told me, he got closer to God and found Jesus and all that, and quit drinking and doing drugs.
That's cool.
Wow, amazing.
I went to his funeral too. At first I was like, I don't know if I should go. And his wife, who is passed now, that he met, during all that, she's died now of cancer, I think. But anyway, I called her. I said, should I go to the funeral? She said, you best be at the funeral. Ronnie will roll in his grave if you don't show up. That's why I didn't know, how some family members or whoever may feel about it. And
that's it.
I'm glad
that's in your book as well. That's in your book as well. The whole story.
Yes. Most of all of that main story there is in the book. And at the graveside service, I believe it was Chris Hicks of the Marshall Tucker Band played a instrumental. Oh, he sang too. He did. I forgot which one he sang, but he sang a ARS song.
They were so good. They were a good band.
Your friend there described it perfectly. Ronnie's voice was so smooth.
Wow. Yeah, I enjoyed them so much. Back Steve, back in the 70s, we had 8-track players, and they came out with cassettes later. But there was no there was no way to get songs unless you got them on a 45 record and you put them on your record player. You got them on the 8-track tape, but there was no way to just all of a sudden you want to play this song. And so when ARS was coming on the radio, you had to just be listening to the radio, and then that song came on, from them, and then you just turned it up, and it was the greatest thing. But I'll tell you, when they came on, you knew who they were. It was just, and the name of it was so cool too.
I think their biggest gig, their biggest live concert was up near Atlanta. The concert was named Champagne Jam. And they saw a picture of that on the front of the album Champagne Jam, I think. It's just a sea of people, like 100,000 people out there or something.
Very cool.
Well, that's a great story of, somebody gets into something, and then it's a story of redemption, forgiveness, because it could have messed up Neal emotionally and all that. But I think that there's quite a bit of healing in that the way it went down, and the fact that Ronnie came out later and just kind of made it right, and I think that probably helped you with your heart, Neal, as far as what you may have been dealing with all those years.
It did. It did. You're right on target with that. And Ronnie was genuinely concerned about all that. And my wife and I were separated at the time, just like he was. I was going through some bad times myself at the same time Ronnie was, and Ronnie and Nancy and I got back together, and it was like I always wondered why the telephone calls kind of drifted off, but I kind of believe that was it. When he saw I was back with Nancy, Ronnie was like, "Well, he's okay now."
Wow, that's so cool. That's got God's fingerprints all over it.
Yep. Yes, it does. I'm a pretty good shot. I believe God kind of pushed that barrel down and shot him through the gut.
Yeah, he lucked out though. That was meant to be though. That whole thing, the way it went down.
So cool, Neal. What a story.
Anyway, back on that other subject, I got a couple of more bizarre calls if you want to hear it.
Absolutely. Lay them on us.
Yes, sir. I call this a hedge clipper call. Got a call about a domestic between father and son. Get there, and ambulance is there, and the elderly gentleman sort of seemed elderly to me at the time in the ambulance with blood running from his face area. Young man running around there hollering and carrying on. I asked him what's going on. He said, "I'm tired of that motherfucker running his mouth." He said, so I took the hedge clippers and cut his lips off.
Oh. Whoa.
I said, "Do what?" He said, "Yeah, come on inside and look." We went inside, and sure enough, there was a pair of hedge clippers sticking in the sheetrock wall about 5 foot off the floor with his daddy's bottom lip hanging off.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa. That's horrific. Jeez. Could they reattach it, or was it
I don't know.
I hope that guy wasn't a tobacco chewer.
I told the paramedics they were in there on the wall. I think they went and got them. I don't know.
That's one of those bizarre stories where they go, "Yeah, they put the lip back on, but it was upside down."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's just cop humor, guys. We don't want anybody to get excited about that. We're not serious.
Yeah. You have to have humor. I tell you, it drove you crazy a long time ago.
A lot of people don't get that, but Neal is going, "Yeah, sure enough, there was his lip right there on the floor," stuff like that. But people are going, "That's disgusting," and all this kind of stuff. But cops, that's a survival skill, man. You got to learn it early on.
Gallows humor.
Yep. That's why we all, a lot of people said we were crazy, in between calls and off duty or whatever. We could act kind of corky sometime, but you had to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Neal, you said you had a pair of stories for us. You got another one?
Yeah.
Looks like you got some trespassers going on over there.
Yeah.
You got a dog in the background?
Yeah, I do, but they're not supposed to be barking. So,
well, that's unbelievable how this fits in this story I'm about to tell you.
I planned that then.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we get a call about a bad odor coming from a house, and we get there, and up under the carport, I believe we were, and you could smell it through the door. We knew what it was, but nobody was around that knew anybody, and so we had to kick the door in, and it's dark in there, and like I said in the book, we had our weapons out because you never know, and started easing down a dim lit hallway. About halfway down the hallway, we could hear this sound like a dog lapping water, and so like, what the hell? And so we ease on down and look in the next room to the right, and a lapping sound was a dog lapping his owner's brains from the skull, what was left of his head. The dude that took a 12-gauge shotgun and blowed his entire face off. And I mean, for real. I mean, it was like they took a big ice cream scoop and scooped his face out and just left nothing but the back of his skull.
Whoa!
And, that dog was lapping away. And
what kind of dog was this?
I believe it was like a little Cocker Spaniel.
Wow!
It was a Chihuahua, Steve.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, we ran that man's best friend away, and called for detectives.
Holy, yeah. I mean, I've been in houses before with, decomposed bodies have been there a long time, and cats and dogs, they don't care. They're not going to let anything go to waste.
No, they're eco-friendly.
Wow, that is disgusting. Whew.
Dude, that is disgusting.
Thanks,
Neal.
Yeah, I don't know how much of this you might need to edit. Folks might not ever want to listen again.
No, this is what they sign up for. They want to hear what you guys really see, and that's just a fact of the job.
This is a real deal, man. It's not Hollywood out there.
No.
Neal, we don't want to keep you all day, but do you have another like bizarre or crazy call you dealt with?
Yeah, let me think back. Have to be a human head in the street. I was on the DUI task force and had got off at 3 a.m. and was on the way home. And we take police cars home here. They started that car assignment program in about 1980. But anyway, I was on the way home and at I-75 at a local street called Pinona Avenue, which is US 41, and I-75, I was southbound on 41 and saw something on the left side of the road that looked like a dead animal. I slowed up. I'm like, what the hell? And I could see hair and a stream of blood running across the next lane. I stopped beside it and put my spotlight on it, and it was a human head just sitting there on its neck, with its eyes wide open, looking north.
Wow. Is this male or female?
It was a male. And I'm like, what the hell? And, passersby, it was 3 a.m. There's still a few cars, Passersby going north was just driving through the blood, looking like, what is going on? And I turned on my strobes and called it in and told them we was no doubt would need a fatality investigator. And I start with, I didn't know how the head got there. And
I'm sorry to laugh, but this is just like bizarre.
Wow.
And I looked over, shined the light over in a little ravine there by the interstate ramp, and there was a Jeep over in the ditch. And what had happened was the dude was northbound on Pinona Avenue, and he had a little to drink, I believe, and there was a backhoe northbound on Pinona. Carrying one of those huge steel plates that they used to cover up construction holes with.
Ugh.
Had a steel plate hanging from the backhoe on a cable, just the right angle, and he ran up under that plate, cut his head off clean like a guillotine. And his body stayed in the Jeep. The head flew out on the ground.
Wow. And you guys didn't get any calls about that?
No, it had just happened when I saw it. And, I didn't have to work it. I was on the way home, and I waited. Everybody else got there. I went home, went to bed.
Man, Neal, where did you work again? People's heads are falling off. Dogs are eating people's brains. My goodness.
And I thought
Macon, Georgia, 90 miles south of Hotlanta, Georgia.
Hotlanta.
Yeah, I know there's that old saying that when your time, it's your time, and then some things are just too perfect. Like this guy, it was his time. That's all there is to it.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty disgusting, Neal. I appreciate it. I'm gonna go eat lunch now.
I don't know, man. I had whatever on my back. I saw too much, more than most.
What about the incest?
You got a good attitude about it still. It hasn't.
Yeah. Hey, I just thought of, man, another one. And this one was actually done by a police car. I was on in like 1979. I was on a unit called the Armed Robbery Unit. We used to stake out back when you could stake out a convenience store and hide in the cooler or back room with a shotgun and kill the perp and nothing be said. But that's what we did, and we had electronic device in a van that would show us where an alarm was going off and all that. But anyway, one of our unmarked cars was responding to supposedly a robbery in progress, and that was going down a big hill. That helped with the speed. I know they had it in the floor, and a lady walked out in front of them that what blood they could scrape up, I think, turned to .43 BAC.
Oh crap!
But
Wow.
this lady could not been more messed up. I'm not exaggerating. If she had somehow pulled the pin on a grenade and swallowed it, she was in 3 different pieces and a stream of intestines right down the center line.
Oh,
golly!
wow.
So you guys saw it all out there. That's some weird stuff.
I'm almost. I have one more question on deck, and I'm hesitating to ask what Neal's going to say. Neal, can you tell us about the most intense and/or terrifying call you responded to?
Well, like I said, it's all a blur, but of course, shooting a human being is pretty terrifying. But actually, I don't remember feeling terrified at the time. But something comes to mind is one time my right leg was actually shaking on the gas pedal. I was driving down a road on a Saturday evening, a residential street with both windows down in the summer, listening for music. I was on a loud music complaint. Must not have been too loud. If I had to let the windows down to listen for it, but that's what I was doing. And I got to a stop sign, and I don't know if any of y'all ever heard it, but I heard that sickening hissing sound of hot lead flying over the car. And it sounded like one of them could have came through the window and out the other open window, but I doubt it. But that's how close it sounded. Heard the hiss, and then pop, pop, pop. And I didn't know where it was coming from, so I hit reverse and started backing down the road and trying to talk on the mic at the same time. And I remember my right leg was shaking on the gas pedal.
Oh no!
Yeah, yeah. They say that your major muscle groups can get real jumpy under stress.
And anyway, I stopped, maybe 75 yards back, and by the time I got through calling it in, the control center comes across and says, report a signal 54 that the person shot on such and such a street, and that was a block from where I was. So I drive up there, and sure enough, they had a dude laying in the front yard, shot in the head, and what I couldn't prove it, but it's obvious to me what happened is the stop sign I was stopped at when that lead went over the car was visible from where they shot him at, just maybe 600 to 1,000 yards away. And what happened was they shot him standing in the yard, and when they got to the next stop sign, they saw that patrol car sitting at the next stop sign, and they fired a couple of shots my way, I guess. But
let me intervene and say I think that's the night you came home with the bullet hole in your trunk.
Yeah, I had a bullet hole in the trunk.
Yeah.
And that's your wife, I'm guessing.
Yes, it is.
What a good sport you are for putting up with this for all these years.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, she really is. She's been a great cop's wife.
It's a stressful thing having a spouse in the service of the police. It's sleepless
Law
nights.
Enforcement.
It was. It was.
Also, I'm sorry. The book, Blue Truth, Liberal Lies. One of the platforms of it also is calling attention to PTSD in cops.
Mm-hmm.
People all over the country wonder why some cops appear to be just spazzing out and nutting up and whatever. I mean, cops are suffering just like military people.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you may not see your partner blown to smithereens, but you see the same violence and death and destruction in this part of the country from 20 to 40 years, where they only see it for a few months or a couple of years,
Yeah, I actually interviewed an Inglewood cop who was a Marine, and then he got out and came here and worked for Inglewood Police Department, which I'm sure you've heard of. It's a infamous little city. But he said that to me when I interviewed him. He said, when I was in the service, you come home, it's terrible, but it's over. You're safe.
Right.
But when you're a cop, you come home and eat dinner with your family every night, and then they're going to call you, or the next day it's there. It's like it's your life now. You can't get away.
Yeah.
So what did you do for what are some things you've done to help yourself deal with that kind of trauma?
Bud Light.
Classic.
No, not really. I'm not a abuser of it, just on the weekends usually, but exercise. I'm fortunate, blessed to have. The Macon PD had a pretty strict PT test most of my career. The last 5 years, the crybabies and the liberals made that go away. But most of my career, every year you had to run a mile and a half and do push-ups and sit-ups and bench press and all that. And plus, I was on SWAT team a lot of them years, and we had to do over and above that, like run 5 miles plus what the regular cops did. And it caught on with me. Instead of waiting until test time, I just got the mindset that I'm going to run all the time. So I did, and it has helped me stay in good health. And I hike. Me and my wife, we hike, and mostly I'm walking now. I will jog some. Did 25 miles on the Appalachian Trail in 2016.
Oh dang!
Yeah, that's no stroll in the park. It's a serious hike.
No,
a lot of retired guys, they don't realize that once you retire, man, you still gotta keep in good shape and eat well and stuff like that, because once you leave the job, it all just stops and there's no adrenaline rush. There's nothing going on, and so you have to keep the blood flowing and keep yourself in shape. Otherwise, you'll die early after retirement.
Exactly right. I believe that in the last 20 years or so, I believe if you look, I believe you'd probably see that cops' lifespan after retirement is improving because of, when they started the PT stuff in beginning, like with my career in the 70s and 80s, where before that they were just a bunch of fat cops eating donuts, as the media likes to show. But,
no, there's nothing wrong with donuts. I just, it's just everything in good measure. It was interesting that you talk about that, because I remember back in the I started in 1980, and when we would sit in roll call, they would read this thing in roll call every day. It was called the rotator, and the rotator would have what cars to look out for, what crimes are being committed, and the other thing is they would read the end of watch notices for officers that died after retirement. And anything over 5 years, a guy lived 5 years past retirement, that was a big deal. We'd all clap and stuff like that. God, guy made 7 years. It was normal for us people to leave the job and die 5 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is better now, though. Steve, you lucky.
I bailed early. I'm going to live forever.
Yeah, it can be dangerous if you don't take care of all that stress stuff.
Yeah, I've made it 13 or 14 past retirement from the PD, and I quit that U.S. Marshal gig in 2016, and really retired then. And after that, I had to, really watch, what I do and keep active. It's been 3 years now without working. I'm kind of got the urge to find a part-time job. I don't know.
Well, make it at like the hardware store or something. Stay away from this confrontational type of business. Take a break.
I know that's right. I don't want nothing to do with any kind of law enforcement.
You could be you go to a local coffee shop. You could be like a barista making cappuccinos.
He could work at the mini mart.
Yeah.
Making donuts.
I'd rather be a cop than work in the mini mart.
Oh yeah, if you get a job making donuts, you would never live that down. Oh, now Neal makes donuts. This is great.
Oh. I guess it's a more of a northern thing or something. You don't see cops eating donuts down here that much. You see them in the Waffle House and the coffee shops, but the donut thing just isn't that popular. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not that popular in the Northeast anymore either, actually. When I was a cop in Mass, if guys did get a donut, like Dunkin' Donuts, they would request the non-wax paper bag, because when you got the paper bag, it meant you got a bagel. So they would say, "Give me 2 of those honey dipped in chocolate, and put it in the bagel bag," because no cop would be seen in public eating a donut because it's that bad now. So even when I saw guys order a donut in uniform, and everybody in line's eyes are rolling like, "Oh boy, here he goes." It's like
donuts are cool, especially when they didn't have one else on patrol, but Krispy Kremes. I don't know if you have them on the in Georgia or not, but Krispy Kreme donuts, those are like heart attack bombs. They're just
so good.
Oh, they're so good though. But I believe I heard that the reason that cops started going to like Winchell's. Did you guys have Winchell's on the East Coast there, or Winchell's Donuts? No, it was all Dunkin' Donuts. Well,
no, we do have Krispy Kreme. I think Krispy Kreme started here.
Okay. Well, the reason was because the donut shops were open 24 hours. And so cops could go there at graveyard or at nighttime and get a donut and a hot cup of coffee. And when everybody else was closed. So that's what I heard. That sounded good to me. Otherwise, donuts are pretty good.
Yeah, they are. I love them Krispy Kremes occasionally.
I heard as cops grow, as they get older in their career, they become more and more racist, and they crave donuts. Like so they become this donut-eating racist monster. I read that on a CNN article. So
that don't shoot people in the leg,
right?
Well, only Steve, only on your podcast would we talk about cops and donuts. That's a segment of your podcast today, cops and donuts.
Yeah, like you said, cool. they're wonderful.
They are too.
So y'all have never heard of Macon, Georgia?
I heard of Macon, Georgia because there's movies and there's some other stuff that's come out. But I'm I was a child of the 60s and 70s, so that I don't know about Steve if he ever heard of it.
I was born in 79. So I enjoy the Allman Brothers and bands like that, but I don't have the deep knowledge of the 70s bands and the music scenes at the time.
And you shouldn't.
Right? I was a baby.
Speaking of being in L.A. and cops getting to do all that star stuff, the only thing close to that here is when I got to work concerts at the Centerplex. One of my most memorable things with that was I was wandering around backstage before a show, and Loretta Lynn invited me and another officer on her new bus to show us her new bus.
Very cool.
That was cool. And seen Greg Allman many times up close. And, one time Greg actually pushed me.
Oh my!
Slap the cuffs on him.
This was, I think, when when they were broke up in the early '80s, and Greg went out on his own, and he was playing here at a place called Lakeside Park that's still there, but it's not open. And there was a building there where he had a little concert, jam packed with people. The stage was just a small stage, about a foot high, and so I was trying to just get as close as I could, and I stumbled on something that made me higher than everybody else. So I stood on it. When it was over, or he took a break or something, here he comes stumbling through the crowd, and he looked at me and looked down, and he said, "Man, you're standing on my fucking guitar case." He kind of nudged me off of it. I said, "Well, excuse the hell out of me, Greg. I couldn't see where my feet was."
That's funny.
I enjoy Neal's accent. That's the coolest accent ever.
Absolutely.
So we're all California sounding.
Y'all sound pretty normal though to me. You don't sound like somebody from Jersey or nothing like that.
No, I think California, Massachusetts, except for the Boston area, like we mostly sound like newscasters, kind of like no accent, right? Is that what you would say?
Yeah. That is a good description, newscasters.
A good friend of mine growing up was from Abilene, Texas. He'd come visit in the summers, and he'd go, in his Texas drawl, I'd be like, "Steve, you just sound like you're on the news."
Yeah.
And plus, we're using our radio voices right now. Our radio voices, Steve.
Right, I'm being processed through a lot of technology right now to sound like this.
Yeah. I told my wife earlier, I said, I hate the way my voice sounds so raspy. I said, should I try to talk like this?
No, it's perfect, man. Like Ken said, the Southern draw is. I actually watched a YouTube video, and this guy drove cross country, and then he visited all these different states. He's this guy from South Carolina. And then he came back, and he said he got to Texas, and he's like, just to hear this, he goes, "Is Texas a Southern draw?" He goes, "It kind of sounds like it. I feel like I could live here." He just felt comfortable again because he was back with the draw.
Southern draw.
I generally can tell Texas and South Alabama and the Northeast.
South Alabama, you need a translator for, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was bad. That was so bad.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book? It's Blue Truth, Liberal Lies. It sounds like, when I read the description online, I was reading on your publisher's page too. It sounds like the kind of the mission statement of your book is very similar to my podcast. It's basically just, honest, hard-hitting stories. Let people experience it. Let people really let these stories kind of foster a better relationship between the public and the police to see, what they're really going through. It seems like the gist of it.
Yes, right. You're right on target. It's a combination of stories, like some of the stories we've talked about. And basically, I'm saying that the liberal lies have basically taken the effectiveness out of law enforcement in this country in many cases. Like I was telling you, the first thing out of my mouth was, "I'm glad the dude I shot was white." The liberal lies that we pick on black people, and we pick on this and we do that, it's all a lie. And I make a good point in the book. I said, really people, do you think on one of these nights at 3 a.m. when I was rolling around in a person's living room, crashing over coffee tables, praying backup would get there, do you really think that I'm thinking, well, this dude is black, let me hit him a little harder? Right. Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's just so unreal,
That is just, it's so moving how you said that after you shot him. You said, thank goodness he's white. So you were really operating on some almost paranoia there because of the way the media makes things out.
Yeah. If he hadn't have been white, we would have had to have had crowd control and called the whole department over there. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's just a fact.
Yeah, this happened in December 1998, and is that correct?
December 28, 1998. Just a few days.
So I mean, Rodney King had happened. Different things. The riots had already happened. I'm just going from what's going on in L.A. But in the 70s, LAPD shot Eula Love. She was a black lady with a knife, and then from then on, it's just been got. But it's really bad now. But in 1998, Neal, that was a time when you had to be careful about how you treated people of color and all that kind of stuff. So I can see where you're coming from. You could have been something super righteous with a black person, and you would have been scrutinized up one way and the other. And Ronnie was white, and you were still taking flack from people in that newspaper.
Correct. Hey, talking about taking flack, and one thing that probably made me say I'm glad he's white, I was actually on trial in 1992. Me and another officer was put on federal trial for violation of civil rights. It wasn't criminal. It was the civil statute of the civil rights. We had a club in downtown Macon at the time that catered to the urban music, as they call it, and gang bangers, hung out there and all that. And every Thursday and Saturday night, it was just a small riot. And when it came closing time and gunfire, sporadic gunfire, anyway, one night we would usually block off both ends of the street to keep them from circling in their vehicles and leave quicker. But anyway, I had a black sergeant standing there in the street, and I drove up about ready to go to get 10-8, go back in service instead of being on that detail. And he looked up the street and saw two black females standing beside a car. He said, "Before y'all leave, go tell them to get in the car and move on." I said, "Okay." So I had a white female recruit with me, and I drove up there, and this lady was had her driver's door open and was leaning with her elbow on the roof, just as nice as I could. I said, "Ma'am, you need to get in your car and leave." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because there's no reason to be here. The club's closed, been gunfire and practically riots. Everything's shut down." She said, "I'll leave when I'm fucking ready to leave." I said, "No, you're going to leave now, or you're going to leave with me." We started pawing at each other, trying to get her to cuff her, and then here comes her friend from around the car, big girl, probably 170 pounds, pawing at me, telling me, leave my friend alone, leave my friend alone. And she got up in between us, and where my female recruit was, I don't have a clue, but a big officer was close by. Officer John, and he about 6'6" and 270. He waded up in there and got me and her apart. And yeah, we slammed her to the pavement, face down. I was pissed by then. She was jobbing at me with keys. But anyway, her left arm, when she went down, her arm broke, and we didn't know it. That's when it broke. Partially anyway, but anyway, when Petty John went to cuff her, when he pulled it back, it snapped like a dry twig. Long story short, statute of limitations almost went by right at 2 years. When we got notified we were being sued in federal court. I had to give depositions and all that. Anyway, went all the way through a jury trial, lasted 2.5 days, and she was so dumb. And her attorney, actually, they violated federal law. There's a federal statute that says it's illegal to file a federal lawsuit that is known or should have been known to be frivolous. Okay, how could she pled guilty in court? They let her. That was another problem. They let her. They got bad about plea bargaining here. It was felony obstruction, but they let her plead out for misdemeanor obstruction. So how could she plead guilty to misdemeanor obstruction and make a sworn statement that she was a law-abiding citizen of downtown Macon when she was attacked by 2 police officers. How could it be both? So the suit was obviously frivolous. But anyway, it went in, and she got on the stand, and they asked her, at any time, did you hit Officer Smith? She said, I sure did. He didn't have no business putting his hands on me. And so he said, my lawyer said, I have no further questions. And then another one came in and lied for her. And they asked her, said, do you know what perjury is? She said, what? Perjury. Lying under oath. Do you realize your friend just came in here and admitted to striking Officer Smith? Oh, no, I didn't see that. Anyway, they found me not guilty and had a hung jury on the other guy because there was one guy on the jury that wanted him to pay because he's the one that had the arm when it popped. They dismissed it. Judge Fitzpatrick dismissed it. But that took the wind out of my sails. And that was in '92. Now, I just, after that, I never got in a hurry hardly for BS, for the ghetto. I mean, it ain't about color or whoever. Why should I get in a hurry to come help you when things turn to crap? It's going to be my fault. So that had a lot. That had a lot to do with the statement I made, I'm sure.
Federal court is no joke, because they just don't mess around there. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I mean, especially back then, this is in the 90s, but can you imagine being in the street today with all you cannot do anything without being scrutinized and blamed and all kinds. It's terrible.
It videotaped everywhere.
I couldn't take it today. No way. I'm pretty sure I wish we had body cams back then. It would have helped more than it would have hurt. But now today, you got people purposely antagonizing the police, just purposely, escalating situations so they can sue you or whatever.
Yeah, it's a different time.
Neal, where can people get your book?
Amazon, Books A Million. All this is online. Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. It's available on Kindle. And or there's iBooks or ebooks. And there's a whole bunch more places like Amazon that I've never heard of that's on the online there. But that's the main, most heard of places.
And it looks like it's filled with even more stories like we heard today. So it looks like it's a pretty awesome read. Well, Neal, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. It's been quite a ride.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And
the book is
honored to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you. The book is Blue Truth, Liberal Lies. As you can tell, Neal's got some just crazy and awesome stories. So pick that up and check it out for sure.
Amazon,
and all the other book sites have it. So Neal, thank you, sir, and we'll talk with you soon.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Neal.
Bye.